last year, we've seen a massive potential for foreign election interference. I'm not just talking about the general election, I'm talking about the all online leadership selection process for the Liberal Party of Canada. More votes were discarded, more votes were rejected by Liberal Party members than were accepted. And there was never an explanation. How did 250,000 Liberals get disenfranchised? And how was it that in a statistical impossibility, the winner, Mark Carney, got plus or minus 5%, the identical result in all 338 districts in the country, even winning implausibly in the home ridings of his opponents? Are you telling me that Chrystia Freeland, after a decade of representing the University District of University of Toronto, lost by the same proportion as every other district in the country? It was just implausible. That whole thing was completely uninteresting to Elections Canada, just as the 11 Chinese agents interfering with the last federal election were completely uninteresting to Elections Canada. I tell you all this because I think I've discovered where their investigators have been. They've been investigating citizen journalists, including our friend Keean Bexte, an alumnus of Rebel News, who is now with Juno News, who joins us now from Alberta. Keean, great to see you again. Why don't you tell our viewers, I don't think this is going to shock our viewers because our viewers are ready for the worst. Tell us what Elections Canada wrote to you a couple of weeks ago. What are they threatening you with? What are they accusing you of?
Yeah, so they're accusing me of violating some arcane law that has not been used against anyone other than me that we can tell. That basically says you're not allowed to lie about a candidate going into public office about them breaking the law in some other capacity, which is not what we did. Obviously, we reported the news during election period that we believed at the time and still do to be 100% accurate. There's nothing that leads us to believe we were wrong. In our coverage about Thomas Keeper, the ex-Liberal candidate for Calgary Confederation, who many of your viewers probably know. He was one of the most infamous candidates that the Liberal Party put forward in the last election. And shortly after our coverage of him, he was removed from the ballot. We didn't get an exact reason from the Liberal Party, but our coverage went nationally viral when we exposed some allegations about him made by people very close to him, as close as his family. So the fact that the government is now investigating me criminally for this coverage, I'm in disbelief.
Yeah, you know what? I like to think I'm aware of the different ways a journalist can be censored. I've been hit with a few of those ways myself, including Elections Canada coming after our Libranos campaign. That's 4 years ago. But I did not know that it was a specific offense to talk about conduct that appears to be criminal by a candidate. I just didn't know that was on the books. And I'm just going to read a few words from it. I'm quoting from the letter that you received from Elections Canada. So I'm just going to read section 91.1 of the elections law. No person or entity shall, with the intention of affecting the results of an election, and right there, obviously, your intentions were different. Your intentions was journalism. You're not a partisan person. Make or publish during the election period a false statement that a candidate, a prospective candidate, the leader of a political party, or a public figure associated with a political party has committed an offense under an act of parliament or a regulation made under such an act, or has been charged with or is under investigation for such an offense. Now, what you did is you revealed a pattern of conduct that any right-minded person could say, hey, that looks like it does violate the law. And I know you were very meticulous. I remember talking to you about this story when you were doing it. You, if I may, were quite concerned that you were being rigorous enough because you had a real tiger by the tail. Tell me some of the steps you took to verify the allegations that you ended up publishing. I remember our conversation. Tell our viewers.
Yeah, so I mean, this was one of those stories where it cropped up, and you got to be really careful when you whether they're running for public office or not, if they're a person of public interest and the story is a matter of public interest, you have to be extremely careful because you have their reputation in your hands. And, maybe they did something that the public needs to know about that. That's just what journalism is, right? And you have to make sure that you're as rigorous as possible. And that's what we did. We spoke to about a dozen people that knew Thomas Keeper intimately, who had gone on international trips with the guy, who had worked with him in many different capacities. Some people who he worked for, some family members who were concerned, without getting into too many details about our sources, who we gave anonymity to because we were worried about Thomas Keeper's behavior and whether they would be put in personal risk. But we did have named sources as well, and we did if we weren't able to name a source, we would have been probably not publishing it because it's tough to just publish this kind of thing with anonymous sources. But everyone corroborated everything, and it demonstrated this pattern of behavior that we thought was really important for the voters of Calgary Confederation and Canadians at large to know about one of these candidates who was going to actually become one of Canada's 340 odd board members. The Liberals won the seat right after he was replaced, so he would have ostensibly become a member of Parliament, which makes it, by definition, a matter of public interest for people to know about him. Now, just because he was not charged and convicted in a court of law, it doesn't mean that this shouldn't be talked about in a free and democratic society. The police have a lot of reasons to not necessarily charge someone, and there might be a lot of reasons why someone may have done something and not being convicted of it. That doesn't mean that the public is not allowed to know about it. And that doesn't mean that if someone mentions something that is corroborated and sourced and fact-checked and run by lawyers, and on top of that, we, of course, went to Thomas Keeper to hand him our questions to make sure that he could say, no, that's not true, and here's why you're going to want to correct the record. No, he called the police on me and lied to the police and said that I assaulted him, which adds to this pattern of behavior.
Yeah. I remember that moment because, one of the legal defenses against defamation suits is a concept in law called responsible communication, where if the journalist goes out of their way to reach out to the person they're criticized and put the prickly questions to the person in advance to give them a chance to respond, that really goes a long way to show the court your true motives or to get the truth. And it's tough if you've been taking pot shots at a guy for a week to actually go up to him and say, here's the questions I want to ask you. That's a physically and mentally a difficult thing to do. You did it in a way I've never seen anyone do before. You personally hand-delivered the questions. We've got that on tape. That was part of your original video. When I saw this, I sort of chuckled because it takes a bit of chutzpah to do it. But I also thought to myself, that's smart because you go right to the guy. You're not sending an email. You're not leaving a voice message. You're saying, I'm Keean Bexte. I'm here doing a story. I want your side in it. Let's roll the tape. I thought this was incredible. Frankly, I've never seen it before. Let's take a look.
Mr. Keeper, Thomas. Hi, Thomas. I just have some questions to ask you. We just have some questions to ask you. Hi, Mr. Keeper. Okay, great. Thank you.
No. Sorry. Harley, come in.
Sorry. We just have some questions to ask you. This happens from time to time.
I mean, he ran away from you. I think he knew the story was coming. He could have said, here's why. He could have, I don't know, he could have done a lot of things. But obviously your story was persuasive enough that the Liberal Party didn't run him as the candidate after that. I mean, they seemed to be persuaded that something was deeply wrong. Hey, do you think Thomas Keeper himself was the guy who called Elections Canada? I mean, I guess that calls for speculation. It seems very punitive that they're going after you. You had a successful journalistic story. The Liberal Party obviously agreed. This feels like vengeance.
Yeah, so the whole letter is published at defendjuno.com, and I encourage everyone to go there and read this letter for themselves. And I'm just reading it here. What makes me think that it was Keeper is that the Elections Commissioner says, quote, the allegations have been denied as being false, the allegations were against Thomas Keeper. So the commissioner must have spoken to Keeper before speaking to me, or maybe the Liberal Party denied them as false and maybe they fired him for a different reason. I don't know what their reasoning is, but it's all there in the letter and people can draw their own conclusions. It's worth also noting that we didn't just hand him this letter of questions. We did everything normally as well, right? We called, emailed, texted him and his wife as well. Everyone that was available that was relevant to the story, we did the same thing. And he chose not to. And also interestingly, if this was false, you'd think he would sue us for defamation.
Yeah.
Even though we did try to responsibly communicate with him, if it was really that outrageously false that I am now a criminal because of this story, you'd think he would sue in civil court for defamation. But he hasn't sent us so much as a cease and desist letter, let alone a notice of defamation. So why hasn't he done that? Well, the answer is because he knows, assuming it was him that filed this with the election commissioner and not the Liberal Party itself, he knows that it will cost him nothing to do this and he has no case.
Right.
But taxpayers will still foot the bill to prosecute a journalist. And at the end of the day, that's all he might want.
I want to ask you, because I haven't watched the original story since you aired it. Can you just tell us what the essence of the accusations were? Now, don't go any further in your language than you already have gone, but can you just remind me and our viewers, what was it that all his friends and associates had said he did? And just don't embellish, not that you would, just give me a reminder.
Yeah, I got to be very careful because, like I said, we wanted to be so careful with the story. It was the most fact-checking and time I have spent on any one story in my entire career.
The story's still up on your website, right?
Yeah, it is. I encourage everyone to go there and look at it because they'll be able to read the whole thing. And Juno News and I still stand behind everything that was in there. And if we were led to believe, even now at this point, that something was wrong, we would correct it, but nothing has indicated that we need to. Basically, it was a pattern of abusive behavior ranging of all different kinds of abuse. And you can read from the letter that was sent to me by the elections commissioner. It was specifically, you alleged that he had committed sexual assault and common assault. Now, I don't even know if that letter is true or accurate based off of what we wrote, and I actually don't think that it is. But we did publish a bunch of allegations that were corroborated from others, from people very close to him with primary knowledge of his behavior. One example was him dragging his wife off of her high heels at an event to leave the event physically. That just gives you a little bit of flavor, and it ranges from worse than that to just rude verbal assault against women. So there's a large variety of what we covered, and any of that, if it was a conservative, the Liberals would be taking out attack ads against the entire party about. And now they're trying to put a journalist in jail over it.
The Liberals very rarely succumb to pressure on these things. They like to brazen it out. They're really experts at just don't say anything, never explain, never apologize, just bluff it out. Trudeau was actually a master at that. And for them to have removed this guy, they must have known that this was only going to be the beginning of a bunch of problems. It sounds like they didn't vet him at all. Well, I really regard this as public interest journalism on your part. And you've repeated here some of the extraordinary steps you took to check the facts. And by the way, I think it looks really good on you that you did. And journalistically, and in terms of the trust of your readers and viewers, the fact that will also, in my view, give you a stronger legal defense is a bonus. But that act of responsible communication where you reach out to the other side, that's just plain old good journalism anyways. What is this Thomas Keeper up to now? Do you know?
He's a real estate agent in Calgary.
All right.
I won't comment on what he's doing specifically besides.
No, well, I mean, that's probably the right place, for him. Now, you guys are doing a crowdfund to fight back, and you told me your lawyer's a good lawyer. I know him; he's an expert in this stuff. What's the best website? Is that defendjuno.com? Is it?
100%. Yeah, that's where the letter's published, and everyone can go there to read the exact wording that the state is using to threaten me with 5 years in prison and a $50,000 fine. We just want, we're asking people nothing crazy. We want them to subscribe and join Juno News. I want everyone to support all kinds of independent media in this country, because the larger we are, the more people we have at our back sharing this news, sharing what's going on, and fighting back with the facts. It makes us stronger. It makes us more able to replace the stenographers at state-funded organizations.
Yeah.
And maybe they won't be able to take so many stabs at us the larger we get. So if they go to defendjuno.com, they can read all the news. They can read the full background on this, that our lawyer and hear from our lawyer and hear this, see this document for itself. We just ask that they subscribe so that they can support us in the fight, the now legal fight, and the other journalism that we do.
Yeah, I'm a subscriber, but I will go and chip in a few bucks for the legal defense as well. I think this is one of those cases, you probably know the phrase, the Streisand effect. It comes from when Barbara Streisand had a house in Santa Monica, and some guy took a picture of it from the beach, and like 3 people saw the picture. But Barbara Streisand tried to get that taken off the internet, and because of her legal action, hundreds of thousands of people saw the photos that really only a handful of people had seen, were it not for her making a fuss. I think that's what's happening here. I think they thought you would cower, or they thought you would collapse. I think look, I'm not an expert in this section of the law. From what you say, this is very rarely used. I think you're going to win. And even if you don't win, I don't think the penalty is going to be, God forbid, $50,000. I think, you never know. But I was convicted for doing some Librano stuff, and they actually gave me a $3,000 fine. So I don't think your life's in jeopardy. I think you'll be okay, especially if viewers and readers chip into your defense fund. What I think will happen is the opposite, that you will bring disrepute upon this section of the law, that you will show Elections Canada to be partisan nitpickers who work for one party and ignore genuine election crises, like what I was talking about earlier about
That's
China.
exactly it, yeah.
And I think it's going to bring a lot more attention to you and Juno News. So I don't wish a prosecution on any of my friends, but if I know you and Juno News, I think you're going to turn lemons into lemonade on this one. And I think they're going to come to regret investigating you.
Well, I hope that we can get this law, some attention to this law and how undemocratic it is, because every journalist in the country, not just me, is looking at this investigation against me and the damage that it's causing. Not just the cost of this lawyer, which is extensive. Obviously, it's tens of thousands of dollars, not the nights of sleep that I'm losing over this, but it's the next election and the next story that one journalist might want to cover, but then they might think, whoa, am I going to be at risk of going to jail if I publish this, and if I don't have the resources of Juno News or Rebel News? So hopefully we can draw some attention to this and get this law fixed, because it is undemocratic. It is something you expect to see in North Korea, Iran, Russia, China, and it doesn't have it doesn't belong in a democratic country, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm pleased that the Independent Press Gallery, and by the way, the president of that this year is our own chief reporter, Sheila Gunn-Reid. I'm pleased that the Independent Press Gallery has put out a statement in support of you and Juno News. Last I checked, now it could have changed in the last half hour, but last I checked, the Canadian Journalists for Free Expression, the Canadian Association of Journalists, the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, and Amnesty International and PEN Canada, last I checked, all of those 5 allegedly pro-freedom of speech, pro-journalism groups had not said one word, especially, can you imagine a group called Canadian Journalists for Free Expression, CJFE? Like, it's literally their name. Keean, last word to you. Why are these so-called watchdogs for press freedom actually lapdogs for the Liberal government? Why?
Well, you know why? It's because they're there to protect the Liberals. They're there to protect people who take grant money from the government, and that's their only concern, right? Even the CBC, who published a story about this law, saying that it was going to give a chilling effect to journalists across the country. Now that it's happened, where's their story?
Yeah.
Well, no, they were worried that it was going to happen to one of their friends. Of course, it never would happen to someone like Rachel Gilmore or one of the CBC stenographers. It's going to happen to one of us, and it did. And now that it did, well, they're quietly satisfied. They're looking at this, and if you even look on Twitter, I've retweeted a few of these liberals who are saying, "Good, I hope Keean sees the inside of a prison cell. It's time that people like him
Really?
see some consequences for what they do."
Well,
And
you should take screenshots of that. That's outrageous.
oh, it's unbelievable. And I woke up knowing we were going to publish this today, and I thought, I actually think that we have such a case here. This is so outrageous that even liberals are going to say, yeah, this is too much, right? And I was shocked to see that that's not the case, that partisan liberals are deeply satisfied that this is how the law is being executed in this country.
Well, I'm going to go and chip in at defendjuno.com. Keean says that's where the letter from the investigator also is. Keean, good luck to you. All the best to you guys over at Juno. You're doing great these days. And keep in touch.
Thanks, will do. Appreciate it, Ezra.
Keean Bexte from Juno News. Stay with us. More ahead.